What would you do if someone wrote words about you that cut deep, words that made you feel small and foolish? Would you stay silent, or would you try to fight back in your own way? That question filled my head the morning I saw his review. I can still feel the heat rising in my cheeks when I remember that moment. I was 17 then, and my life was simple but busy. I went to school during the day, and in the evenings I worked part-time at the town library. The library was quiet and calm, but my real passion was acting. Every week I practiced with our small drama group, and every few months we put on a play. We were not professionals, but I loved every second of being on stage. When the lights shone on me, I felt alive. If you are listening to my story now, please make sure you subscribe, share, and comment. I want to know what you would do if someone wrote something painful about you. Would you forgive, or would you try to prove them wrong? Tell me in the comments after you listen. That week our drama group performed a play that was important to me. It was not Shakespeare or something very famous. It was a modern play about family and choices, written by a teacher at my school. I was proud to play one of the main roles, even though it was a difficult character. I practiced every night, repeating the words, moving around my room, and pretending to face the bright stage lights. When the night of the play came, I gave everything I had. My friends clapped, the audience smiled, and I felt strong. Until the newspaper came out. The next morning at the library, I opened the town's cultural blog. A review of our play filled the screen. I read quickly, hungry for praise, but my heart sank when I saw my name. The words stung. Lena Carter works hard, but she is too young to carry such a heavy role. Her lines are correct, but her face tells me she is not ready to show the deep emotions of the character. I shut the computer as if it had burned me. My stomach twisted. He had written my name for everyone to see, and with a few cold sentences, he had made me feel small. I looked again at the name under the review. Daniel Moore, a 19-year-old student from the local college. He wanted to be a journalist, I had heard. His aunt worked for the blog and gave him chances to write reviews. That made me even angrier. Who was he to judge me? He was older, yes, but he was no great writer, no famous critic. Yet with a few strokes of his pen, he had turned my proud night into a memory of shame. I told my best friend Sophie later that week. We met at our favorite cafe near the river, a place with small wooden tables and the smell of coffee and cake in the air. I slammed the blog page open on my phone and pushed it toward her. She read the words, her eyebrows lifting. "That's harsh," she said softly. "But maybe he's just being honest." Honest? Snapped. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know how hard I worked, how much I practiced. He just sat there with his little notebook, judging me. Sophie looked at me for a moment, then laughed. "You're planning something, aren't you?" Her laughter was right. An idea was already forming in my mind. At first, I thought I would march right up to Daniel and tell him exactly what I thought of him. But another part of me wanted something else. I wanted to prove him wrong. If he thought I could not act, then I would show him my best performance, and he would not even know it was me. The chance came sooner than I expected. Sophie told me that Daniel often came to the cafe after his evening writing class at the college. He sat alone, reading or taking notes, drinking the same black coffee every Tuesday and Thursday. I looked at her and smiled. My plan was simple but exciting. I would act in front of him, not on stage, but in real life. I would be someone else, and he would not recognize me. Then, when the truth came out, he would know that he had been wrong about me. The next week, I prepared my disguise. It was nothing too dramatic, but enough to change me. I borrowed glasses from Sophie, tied my hair back in a different style, and wore a plain jacket I never used for school or the library. I even changed the way I held myself, walking more slowly, speaking more calmly. I practiced in the mirror until I could almost believe I was someone else. On Thursday evening, my heart pounded as I pushed open the cafe door. Daniel was there, sitting at his usual table, his head bent over a notebook. I ordered a coffee and sat a few seats away, pretending to read a magazine. Every few minutes I glanced at him. He was serious, his pen moving quickly, his lips pressed together. I felt a strange mix of anger and excitement. This was the boy who had made me feel so small, and yet now I was watching him, planning my little play. I did not speak to him that night. I wanted to test myself first, to see if my disguise was strong enough. I even asked the waiter for directions to the train station, using a different tone of voice. When he answered politely, I felt a secret thrill. If the waiter did not recognize me, then Daniel would not either. That night, as I lay in bed, I smiled into the dark. My plan was working. But I needed a bigger stage for my act. Meeting him once in a cafe was not enough. I needed something that would bring me closer to him, a chance to show my disguise for longer, to test my acting more deeply. A week later, I found my chance. On the college notice board, Sophie pointed out a small poster. Daniel was looking for a volunteer to help him with research for an article. He wanted someone to assist with collecting information for a piece about local artists and writers. "Perfect," Sophie whispered. "This is your moment." I nodded. I would become his research assistant. He would think I was helping him, but really, I would be playing my greatest role. And when the mask finally came off, he would have no choice but to admit that I was a better actress than he had ever believed. I could already feel the story pulling me forward, like a current in a river. I did not know where it would end, but I knew I was ready. Ready to act, ready to prove myself, and ready to see the look on Daniel's face when he learned the truth. When I sent my message to Daniel, pretending to be someone else, I felt nervous and excited at the same time. I wrote that I was interested in helping him with his article. I signed the message with the name Clara, a name I had chosen carefully. It sounded professional, but also simple. Not too much, not too little. I thought about sending it many times before I finally pressed send. My heart jumped as soon as I saw the message disappear into the digital space. There was no way back now. he replied quickly, much quicker than I expected. He thanked me for offering to help and asked if I could meet him the next evening at the library. It was strange to read those words because I worked there almost every day, but of course he did not know that. He suggested we meet at the back table near the history section. I read his message 3 times, my pulse beating fast. This was it. My little play was about to begin for real. The next day, I dressed in my disguise again. Glasses, plain jacket, tied-up hair. I even put on shoes that I normally hated because they were heavy and made me walk differently. But that was the point. I wanted every detail to make me into Clara, not Lena. When I entered the library, I felt a strange thrill. I had been there so many times, but this time was different. I was walking into my own stage, my own scene. Daniel was already there, waiting with his notebook and a stack of papers. He looked serious, as always, his brow bent in concentration. I walked up slowly and said in a calm voice, "Hello, I'm Clara. You wanted some help?" He looked up, blinked once, and smiled politely. He did not recognize me at all. That moment filled me with pride. It worked. I had become someone else. He explained the task. He wanted to write about local artists, writers, and performers. He had lists of names, but he needed someone to help him gather details, search old files, and sometimes ask questions. It was not hard work, but it needed patience. I agreed to help, my heart racing as I spoke carefully in my new voice. He thanked me and began to explain more, and I listened, nodding at the right moments, pretending I was just a helpful student with free time. For the next hour, we worked together. He asked questions, I answered. He passed me notes. I read them carefully. He even laughed once when a paper slipped from his hand and fell to the floor. His laugh was softer than I imagined, not loud, but kind. I almost forgot for a second why I was there. Then I remembered the review, the cruel words he had written about me, and my anger returned like a shadow. As the days passed, we met again and again. Sometimes at the library, sometimes in the cafe, sometimes even outside in the park when the weather was warm. Each time I wore my disguise, each time I spoke in my calm, Clara voice. And each time he believed me. He thought I was just another student helping him. I acted well. My heart was proud. And yet sometimes it felt heavy too. Because the more I watched him, the more I saw that he was not only the critic who hurt me. He was also a young man trying hard, making mistakes, and dreaming of his future. He often talked about wanting to be a real writer one day, to publish plays for television or maybe even for the stage. He spoke with passion, his eyes lighting up when he described his ideas. And sometimes, when he looked at me, or rather when he looked at Clara, his expression softened, as if he trusted me. It was confusing. I wanted to hate him, but I could not. One afternoon, we sat outside the cafe, papers spread out on the table, cups of coffee growing cold. He leaned back in his chair, looking tired.
"Sometimes I wonder if I'm wasting my time," he said. "Writing reviews, writing notes. None of it feels important."
I wanted to tell him that his words could hurt, that they had made me cry, that they had burned me inside. But Clara could not say that. Clara was only his helper. So instead I said, "Every word matters to someone. You never know who might read them." He looked at me for a long moment, as if those words surprised him. Then he nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right." I smiled, but inside, I felt the weight of my secret. He had no idea that the someone I was talking about was me. The weeks went by, and our project grew. We finished notes, prepared drafts, and planned the article together. Daniel grew more comfortable around me. He even told me stories from his childhood, about his aunt who pushed him to write, about his fear of never being good enough. It was strange to hear those words from him, because I had thought of him as confident, sure, maybe even arrogant. But under that surface, he was just as unsure as I was. And then came the day when he invited me to meet someone important.
"Clara,"
he said, his voice almost excited.
"I have a meeting with Harold Finch. You know him, right? The retired screenwriter who lives near the hills. Nobody gets to talk to him, but I think he agreed because he wants to help young writers. Do you want to come with me? It could be useful for the article."
The name made my stomach twist. Harold Finch. Everyone in town knew about him. He was famous once, but now he lived quietly, refusing most visitors. People said he was strange, difficult, maybe even a little dangerous. But Daniel had managed to get an invitation. And now he was asking me, Clara, not Lena, to join him. I agreed, of course. How could I say no? This was the perfect chance to continue my act, to prove myself even more. The morning of the meeting, I prepared carefully. I wore my disguise, but I added a scarf and a small notebook to look even more professional. I told myself again and again, "You are Clara. Stay calm. Stay in control." We walked together to Harold Finch's house, a large, old building surrounded by tall trees. The windows were dark and the garden was overgrown. It looked almost like a place from a ghost story. Daniel walked with confidence, but I could feel the tension in his steps. He knocked on the heavy wooden door, and for a long moment nothing happened. Then, slowly, it opened. Harold Finch stood there, tall, gray-haired, his eyes sharp. He looked at us without smiling. Daniel spoke quickly, introducing himself and explaining about the article. For a second, I was sure Harold would send us away. But then, to my surprise, he stepped aside and let us in. Inside, the house smelled of old books and dust. Shelves lined the walls, filled with scripts and novels. The air was heavy, but there was also something magical about it, like stepping into another world. Harold led us into a study with a wide desk and 2 chairs. He sat behind the desk, his face unreadable. Daniel began to ask questions. At first,
Harold gave short answers, almost cold. But then, as Daniel spoke about his dreams of writing plays, Harold's expression changed. He leaned forward, listening more carefully. Soon, they were talking not only about his old work, but also about Daniel's ideas, his hopes, his doubts. I sat silently, pretending to take notes. Inside, I was burning with surprise. Daniel was not only confident, he was brave. He shared his thoughts openly, even though Harold could easily laugh at him. But Harold did not laugh. Instead, he nodded, sometimes even smiled. The conversation went on for more than an hour. I watched as Harold gave Daniel advice, pointing out where his ideas were strong and where they were weak. Daniel listened carefully, writing notes, his eyes shining with excitement. I had never seen him like this before. And then I realized something that shook me. My disguise, my plan, my anger. All of it suddenly felt small compared to what was happening in front of me. This was a real moment, a moment where someone older and wiser was helping Daniel grow. I had come here hoping to see him fail, but instead, I was watching him succeed. When we left the house, Daniel was smiling in a way I had never seen before. He looked almost lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from him. He turned to me and said, "That was amazing. I feel like I can really do this now. Thank you for coming with me." I forced a smile, my heart twisting inside, because I knew the truth was still hidden. He still thought I was Clara, and the longer I kept up the act, the heavier it felt. I walked beside him in silence, wondering how much longer I could wear this mask. The days after our meeting with Harold Finch were strange for me. Daniel was more alive than I had ever seen him. He walked with a spring in his step. He spoke with excitement, and every time we met, he told me how Harold's advice had opened his eyes. "He believes in me, Clara," he said one afternoon as we walked along the river. "He told me I have something real, something worth working on." His voice shook with joy. "I finally feel like I'm not wasting my time." I smiled, but the smile felt heavy on my lips. Because while Daniel felt lighter, I felt the opposite. The mask I had put on weeks ago now pressed down on me. At first it had been fun. I enjoyed tricking him, playing the role, proving my skill as an actress. But now, each time he called me Clara, I felt a twist in my chest. He trusted me. He opened his heart to me. And it was not really me he was speaking to. The lie had grown too big. One evening, Sophie noticed my face as we sat together in the cafe. She leaned forward, whispering so nobody else could hear. "You're not enjoying this anymore, are you?" I sighed, staring into my coffee. At first, I wanted revenge. I wanted to show him he was wrong. But now... My voice trailed off. "But now you see, he's just human," Sophie finished for me. "Not a monster, not a villain, just a boy with dreams." Her words hit me hard. I nodded slowly. "Yes. But what do I do now?" If I tell him the truth, he'll hate me. He'll feel betrayed. But if I keep lying, I'll hate myself. Sophie put her hand on mine. Then you already know the answer. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the review that had started everything. I thought about my anger, my plan, my disguise. I thought about the look on Daniel's face when Harold spoke to him, when he felt hope. And I knew Sophie was right. I had to tell him. The chance came sooner than I expected. Daniel sent me a message the next day. He wanted to meet again, not for the article this time, but to share his new play idea. I trust you, Clara, he wrote. I want your opinion before I show anyone else. Those words made my stomach twist. He trusted me, but not me, not Lena. He trusted Clara, the mask I had created. I agreed to meet him that evening at the cafe. When I arrived, he was already there, papers spread out on the table. He looked up and smiled warmly. Clara, I'm glad you came. I sat down, my hands shaking slightly. He began to read his new play to me, his voice full of passion. It was about a young man who wore a mask because he was afraid to show his true face. I almost laughed at the cruel irony. He did not know that the story he was telling was also my story. When he finished, he leaned back and asked, "What do you think?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. My throat was tight, my chest heavy. Finally, I whispered, "Daniel, there's something I need to tell you." He looked at me, surprised. "What is it?" I took off my glasses slowly, then untied my hair. His eyes widened. I felt tears sting my eyes as I said softly, "There is no Clara. My name is Lena. I was the actress you wrote about in your review. I tricked you." Silence fell between us. His face went pale, his mouth slightly open. For a moment I thought he might stand up and leave. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. You were Lena all this time." I nodded, shame burning in my cheeks. "Yes. I was angry at your review. I wanted to prove you wrong. So I pretended to be someone else. I wanted to show you I could act, that I could fool you. And I did. But the more I stayed in disguise, the worse I felt. You trusted me, and I was lying." He stared at me, his jaw tight. I could not read his eyes. Was it anger? Disappointment? Hurt? All of them at once? At last he pushed his papers aside and leaned back. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" he asked quietly. "Why play this game?" Tears slipped down my cheeks. "Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I spoke as myself, you would laugh. Afraid that you would not listen. I wanted to be strong, and pretending was easier than being real." Daniel was silent for a long time. The cafe around us buzzed with voices and clinking cups, but at our table there was only silence. I held my breath, waiting for him to say he hated me, that he never wanted to see me again. Then, to my shock, he sighed and rubbed his forehead. You're right. I did hurt you with that review. I thought I was being honest, but maybe I was careless. I didn't think about how my words would make you feel. I just wanted to sound professional. I looked at him, surprised. So, you're not angry? He gave a small, tired smile. Oh, I'm angry. But not only at you. I'm angry at myself too. Maybe we both made mistakes. Relief washed through me, though my heart was still heavy. I'm sorry, I whispered. I never meant for it to go this far. He nodded slowly. I believe you, but it will take time for me to trust you again. I accepted his words. They were fair. Trust could not be rebuilt in a day. From that evening, things changed between us. We still worked on finishing the article, but the air between us was heavier, more cautious. Sometimes he looked at me as if trying to see the real me, not the mask. Sometimes I wanted to run away from the weight of my lie. But I stayed, because leaving would mean giving up completely. Weeks later, when the article was finally published, Daniel surprised me. He sent me a message with a link, and I opened it nervously. At the end of the article, after writing about all the artists and writers we had researched, he added a final line. Thanks to Lena Carter, who reminded me that behind every performance, every mask, there is a real person. I read the words again and again, my heart swelling. He had used my real name. Not Clara. Lena. The next time we met, I thanked him. He shrugged, his lips twitching with a small smile. It was the truth, he said simply. In that moment, I understood something important. Masks can hide us for a while. They can protect us, trick others, even give us courage. But in the end, the truth always finds its way through. And when it does, it can hurt, but it can also heal. Looking back now, I know I made mistakes. I should have spoken honestly from the beginning. Yet without the mask, I might never have learned the lesson I carry with me now, that the bravest thing we can do is show our true face. And maybe, just maybe, Daniel learned something too. Because sometimes the harshest critic and the wounded actress are not enemies at all. They are just two young people, both afraid, both learning how to find their voices. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it touched your heart and helped you practice your English at the same time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, and leave a comment to tell me what you learned or how you felt. Your support means a lot, and it helps me bring you more stories for English learning.